today we are going to make some orange chicken with rice and Asian slaw and some almond muffins with a lovely almond glaze. So we're going to start out by getting our rice going. Since that's typically what takes the longest, I've got about 2 cups of jasmine rice. And we're going to give it a quick rinse and then we'll pop it in our pan to start cooking up here. So just a good rinse to kind of get that kind of white powdery stuff off so that we have a nice, lovely, non-sticky part of our rice left. And you don't need to rinse it for so long. Honestly, like 30 seconds is more than enough. Give it a couple good shakes out, but this is just going to give you a much better texture so your rice isn't like mushy at the end. And put this in 3 cups of water. And then I'm going to turn my back burner on high. Once it comes to a nice boil, then we'll turn the temperature down low and we'll just let it simmer on low with the lid on. So just your basic white rice. Give that a nice little stir here. Okay. And while that's going there, again, nice and high, let's get our muffins going. We are going to make, again, a lovely kind of a sour cream almond muffin. So we're going to start with our wet ingredients here. We're going to use a 1/2 cup of melted butter. Let's grab another little spatula. And a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard. And it can be active or, you could have just fed it up, or it can be ready to discard. Either one works. So here we've got a 1/2 cup. I kind of fed mine up this morning because I was getting low on them. I made waffles this morning for the boys because they really, really wanted it. It was actually my nephew came in and he was like, "Can I have waffles?" And I was like, "Yes, we can have waffles for breakfast today." So I used a bunch of that during our little thing. So we're going to mix our 1/2 cup of our sourdough discard with our 1/2 cup of melted butter. Can I give it a good mix here? And then we're going to add in 3/4 cup of sour cream. So I'm thinking I have just around 3/4 cup left, but we'll give it a good squeeze and see where we're at.
Can you go over what sourdough discard is?
So when you're making sourdough bread, you have your starter, which is a base of essentially fermented flour and water that sits on your counter. And that's the leavening agent in your bread, what gives it rise. So some breads use yeast, which you added in. Sourdough uses the natural yeast and flour in the fermentation process to give it its rise. But you have your starter, which you need to feed. And in order to feed it, you have to give it more flour and water. And so you don't have huge amounts of starter. You get rid of 1/2 of your starter and then you feed it with, 50% more on there. And so that's your discard. And instead of just throwing away your discard, you can use it in a lot of great recipes like muffins and cookies and naan and everything under the sun, I feel like. But it's just a great way to use something instead of throwing it away. And it gives you some of those great health benefits that sourdough gives you as well. So we're mixing in our 3/4 cup of sour cream. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of cream. And then we'll do 2 eggs. This will kind of be the start of our wet base for our muffins. Let's get these eggs in here. 1 and 2. Let's see. I thought I saw something drop in there, but I must have been imagining. I thought it was a shell, but it must have just been part of the egg. Let me go wash my hands. This pack of eggs I got from the store recently, it has the thinnest eggshell, but it's so funny because the week before I was just thinking about these are the thickest eggshells. And I'm like, oh, why can't I just have one right in the middle? Okay, let's mix in our eggs and our cream into our wet mixture here. And you just make sure your eggs get completely mixed in so you don't have any big, long, like stringy bits of egg white because they like to avoid getting mixed in. And we can do lots of our mixing now, but once we add that flour in, we want to minimize the amount of mixing we do because that flour, once you mix it in with the butter, make sure then it will make it a denser muffin. Okay. We're going to get a cup of sugar in. We're going to use granulated sugar. This is going to add the sweetness to our muffins. And these muffins, I will say, they have the perfect amount of sweetness. They're not overly sweet, but just that perfect hint. We'll make a little glaze on top, which gives them even a little added extra sweetness, which I love. So 1 cup of sugar. I'll mix this in here. And you want to use granulated over brown sugar because you want to use that light, because this is a lighter batter to kind of go with almonds. And then we're going to add in our almond extract. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of almond extract. 1 and 2 to give that lovely almond flavor to this. And then I hear a little bit of a bubble going on with our rice. So I'm just going to give it a good stir around, mix it up, because I don't want it to stick to the bottom, but it's not quite at a full boil yet. We'll mix in our almond extract. And this is going to give you a lovely almond flavor to it. And the almond has quite a strong flavor to it, but we'll also use a little bit in the glaze that goes on top, which will actually give you a bit more. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of baking powder and then a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So 1, 2, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix that in, and then we'll add in 2 cups of flour. And this will be the base. It's just a really simple kind of muffin base. And then we'll make a glaze, and then we'll sprinkle a little bit of our sliced almonds on top for it. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that baking powder gets mixed in well. You don't want any lumps in it. Here we go. It smells very, very almondy. It's very lovely. I love the smell of almond, like sugar almonds, I should say, like amaretto and stuff like that. Not just plain roasted almonds, but the good, delicious almonds. We're going to put in 2 cups of flour, and I'm using all-purpose flour here. So make sure make sure there's no pocket. 1.
Mary sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. And 2. And before we mix that in, it looks like my rice has come to a nice boil here. So I'm going to give it one more good stir, and then we will put our lid on. And we'll return our temperature down to nice and low. Just make sure you scrape along the bottom to pick up any so they don't stick to the bottom of the pan.
And Judy sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that.
Do you want to explain your 2 boil rule for rice?
Yes. So when the first part is you want to make sure it comes to a nice high boil even after you stir it. You want to get to the hot boil first because that's going to soften the kind of the exterior of your rice. And then what you're going to do is once you've gotten to this nice high boil, you're going to turn it down to low and put the lid on and simmer it. If you don't do that high boil well enough, you're going to have a crunchier outside to your rice for it. I'm actually going to let it sit for a little bit because it looks like a high boil, but I think it needs a little bit more. You want a good rolling boil, and trust me, it does make a difference. We're going to mix this in to it. And again, this is going to be a lumpy, chunky batter. You don't want to mix it until it's smooth because then you'll have a dense muffin. It is a butter base, which means you just want to barely mix it. You just mix it until the white little floury part, the powderiness is gone, but there should be some chunks. And then just scrape along the bottom because again, we want to make sure it gets evenly mixed up in here. There we go. Now that is a thick batter. And let's get our little muffin tins going out here. I think we've got a good boil now here going on. So I'm going to give it one good stir, bring it off, and then you see it instantly comes back up to a boil. Bring it all the way down to low and put our lid on. And I always use this on my smallest burner, not my big ones, because you want the least amount of heat you can give it. Sometimes if I cook it in a smaller pot, I will take the pot and put it halfway on the burner.
And what's the ratio for 1 cup of rice?
So for 1 cup of rice, I do 1.5 cups of water. And that seems to be like the perfect mix for you. But it also depends what type of rice you're using. Some rice need more water, like a brown rice or a wild rice, and some need less water. So I always say, check your bag on the back or whatnot for it. That always typically has the best ratio. Okay, I'm going to grab a spoon so we can spoon these guys off into our little mix. See, I'm hoping that these will come out and have the nice flavor. There used to be this little mom and pop grocery store just down the road from us. And it was so wonderful because it was like 2 miles away and it had all of this like just good, delicious stuff. But they had this great little bakery in it. And they had the most amazing almond muffins there. And my kids loved them. Everybody loved their muffins were just amazing. And I have I think recreated her muffin completely because I know that she used almond paste in it and it was a denser one, but these are a little bit lighter. But I've got the flavoring fairly close, but her texture, it was so good because you could tell that she used the almond paste in it. We're going to go in with each one and then we're going to come back over and give another big dollop because, again, I like to have this nice big bakery dome on my muffins because everybody loves the tops, not the bottoms. And that's where you're going to get it when you fill it up to the tippy top. Here, it's the best part. I know when I send like muffins and everything home with my mom, I'm always like, these are your muffins. Don't eat the top of my muffins and leave the bottoms because nobody wants the bottoms of the muffins. It's like the worst part. I've always thought about getting one of those. They're called like a muffy tray, which has a very, very shallow baking area. So you can make essentially just a muffin. But I was talking to a friend about it and she goes, yeah, I have that, but it never bakes up quite the same. You just don't get that good dome on it and that kind of nice moisture base to it.
You have questions. Does almond paste and almond flavoring have the same?
Yes, it has the same kind of that amaretto, that sweet almond flavor versus like a, roasted one. Different textures to it, but yes, almond extract gives you the same kind of flavor on there, but without changing the texture or consistency of your baked good. And you can really sub it in for vanilla extract on most of your recipes for that little almond kind of flavor. You can take a vanilla cake and make it a little bit of an almond butter cake or whatnot, which is lovely.
And how long do you think these muffins will last?
You know what? I will say, I don't know. I mean, our king cake, which was huge, is down to this small piece. I'll get it out here in just a second. Now, we've had a lot of people come over and nibble on it, but if my kids love it, they'll be gone by tomorrow. And that's always when I know is when the baked goods are gone fairly quickly, then I know that they liked it. Here, give this a quick rinse. But here is my king cake. I'll grab it real quick. This is all that is left from my king cake. And there's my nice little cinnamon swirl in it. And it was a ring about that big. So you can see with us, and I mean, that was eating between 11 people. So It was very, very, very delicious on there. And it was like that kind of, it's a little bit lighter than the cinnamon roll base for it because I add a little bit more egg in it. But so good. I said next time I'm going to add even more frosting on it though. I'm going to brush it with a little bit of cream on the top of each one of these muffins. Help give them a nice kind of golden brown top to it because it is a very blonde batter in here, with just everything being light and colored. And you'll have a very pale muffin, but this will give you a nice little brown top to it. Keeps it a little bit moister too, and makes it delicious. And then we're going to sprinkle just a teeny bit of sugar on top, add a little extra sweetness to it, a little crunch thing, which I think is perfect. Little dabby dab. And then these are going to bake at 400 degrees for 18 minutes. And then while we're doing that, we're going to work on our chicken and our slaw and have a nice, easy, delicious lunch. Here we go. Just a little sprinkle of sugar on each one. Gives you just a teeny bit of extra sweetness because, again, these aren't, your overly sweet, little bites muffins that you get from the store, which I swear are like just like eating a cupcake. These have like that perfect hint of sweetness and deliciousness in one, without being like over the top. We're going to pop these in the oven at 400 degrees. I like to do mine on the top rack so it gets that direct heat from the top and the best bake. And for 400 degrees, make sure your oven's been preheated for a good, at 400 for at least 5 minutes, because when you open it up, it brings the temperature down. And then we're going to set it for 18 minutes. So I always say, you always preheat your oven, but even though it's up and it's at 400 degrees and it beeps, don't put something in right away. Wait an extra 5 minutes to really make sure it gets to that full temperature. Okay, now, while we're waiting, let's get our chicken going for our little stir fry here so that we can have it going for our orange chicken. I'm going to, let's mix our cornstarch base with a little bit of flour. We'll add in a little bit of garlic salt on here. But we're going to use primarily cornstarch with this. It's going to give a nice kind of lighter texture to the batter. Might as well use the rest of that. Well, let me put this to recycle. And then let me grab, because I'm going to need a little cornstarch and a little bit too. So always have lots of cornstarch. And I forgot my pepper. We're going to add in a little bit of pepper. Now, I don't do much of a seasoning on my batter for this because these are going to be coated in a nice, lovely seasoning. So just a little bit of garlic salt, but mainly the sauce, that way the orange kind of chicken sauce is what's going to add the flavor. But we do need a little bit. And then a little bit of flour. So I kind of do half and half flour, half cornstarch. And mainly you could do all cornstarch if you needed to. But my main reason for doing half and half is most people don't have a whole lot of cornstarch on them. So it's easier to mix it in. The flour gives it a slightly denser texture, but it's still, with that cornstarch, it's still going to be nice and light and fluffy. Okay, let's go in. Let me grab a fork. Give this a quick toss to mix that cornstarch and that flour up with a little bit of that pepper in there and just a teeny bit of garlic salt. I'll actually toss it with my hands. Might work a little bit better. And there we go. And then before we do that, before we cut my chicken up, let's mix up our 2 eggs, because this is not going to be a double battered base. You're going to go into the egg and then into the cornstarch mixture. So it works a little bit faster, and it just makes it to where your breading is not quite as dense on it for this dish, which is nice. You want a light, crispy, battered chicken, not like a hand breaded chicken with the sauce. 2 eggs should be all that you need. I'm going to whip them up There we go. Until you've got those eggs nicely mixed together. There. And now we're going to cut our chicken here into two kind of, and we're going to flame in half in there. But while we're doing that, let's get some oil heating up so that we can fry our chicken up, because a lot of times waiting for the oil to heat up is the thing that takes the longest.
Are you streaming tonight, and about what time?
We are going to stream tonight. So as long, one of my daughter's practices has already been canceled because of the weather, but my other daughter still has her practice. So if her practice holds, we will probably stream around, like 7:30ish for that. If her practice gets canceled, that might alter a little bit. Central time, yes. It will just depend on, I will say schedules change nonstop. And it's not even like raining too much out there, but in the spring, clubs are very, very protective of their grass fields because apparently it is very, very expensive. And just one night of playing on a field in like wet condition can cause like $1 million worth of damage. It happened like a couple of years ago that they like did it and it just like completely destroyed. Now in the fall, after you've done most of your season and you're not worrying about the grass setting, it's not so bad. But in the spring, playing on wet fields can do a lot of damage.
Judy sent you a gift.
Okay.
And how was your daughter's game yesterday?
Thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Daughter's game was excellent. So she actually was the reason they won the game. So it was really, really exciting. So she normally doesn't play up as a forward, but we were having like a really hard time getting like any goals or whatnot. So it was 0-0 for, I want to say like the first half of the game. And so she was playing defense the first half. She was playing the right back. And then the coach moved her up as a forward and she drew the penalty kick. So she got fouled hard in the box as she had a kind of like she duked around and was going straight for the goalie. It was just her one-on-one and she got tripped. So she got a penalty kick and she didn't want to kick it, but her friend kicked the goal for her and they got the point and they won 1-0. So pretty awesome and exciting. We're going to cut our chicken up in like little bite-sized pieces. You don't want to make them too big because if you do make them, they grow once you do our little breading on it here. Cut these guys. And here. And again, yes, these grow in size, so I never try to make them too big. But it was a very exciting game. We heard there was a scout at the game, so hopefully. But she played awesome. She played hard, and it's always kind of, out of the last couple of games, she's been the one who's been the scorer. So that's kind of been really nice when she's not really played forward or been in that position. So we're excited. This weekend we have a game that's quite a drive. We'll be driving, I think like 4, but then we lose an hour. So it's like a 5-hour difference and then we come back. So it will be a long drive Saturday for her games, but I'm excited for them because apparently this weekend we're playing the toughest team who in her age group that won it all nationally last year. So I'll be interested to see how her team plays up against them. Because, if you do really well, then you're like, wow, we played this well against the number 1 ranked team for this age group. So pretty excited. Okay. We've got our chicken here. And then what we're going to do, heat that just a little bit higher. We're going to dip it into our egg and then into our mixture here. Now, we don't have to dip it one at a time. I'm actually going to drop in a whole bunch, and then we'll move it over and then coat it up. So this is a lot easier than hand breading. Just make sure you break your pieces of chicken apart so that you can transfer them into the bowl. And I will say this is one thing that makes this process a little bit easier than doing a full-on like breading. There we go. And then we'll coat these up before we dump in the other ones. I like to leave mine in the bowl with this whole mixture because I find if you take it out and rest it on with the cornstarch, it will start to absorb it. And you want it to be powdery. That gives you the crispiest kind of texture to it. Let's get these last bits in. And that way we can start frying these guys off. And while they're frying up, we'll make our little Asian slaw as our kind of our side. And then we've got to make an almond glaze for our muffins. So good mixture around. And you can see how 2 eggs is pretty much perfect for this. And because we aren't doing that double kind of dipping on there, you really can stick with that. When I do my bigger fillets, I like to do 3 eggs just to have that little bit of extra egg mixture, but you don't need it with this. And then we're going to mix them around until we have it completely coated. This is one, just get your hands in there because you could try to do it with tongs, but it's really hard to make sure that all the pieces are broken apart. And once we have them nicely, I will feel like our oil should be almost ready. And we can start dropping them in. Now these will cook up a little bit. They'll cook up a good bit faster than when we do our bigger chicken fillets because these are tinier chunks of chicken. But because they're tinier chunks of chicken, we're going to have to make sure there's ample room around. So we're going to have to do this, I'm pretty sure, in 2 rounds. Okay. Feel like we're pretty close here. Slide these guys out of the way, and then I'll come back and I'm just going to use my hand before I give it a good scrub to drop it in there. But again, just make sure they're all coated up with this cornstarch, flour, garlic, salt, and black pepper mixture. Okay, I'm going to drop them in, and then what we'll do is once they're dropped in, I'm going to turn my temperature down to a medium. I like to start the oil up high so that it will fry nice. It's nice and hot. But when you add this meat in, it's going to instantly cool down the pan. So we're going to get these guys dropped in there. I'm going to kind of spread them around, make sure we have plenty of room for this. Now, with this being a cornstarch and flour things, these are going to have a slightly blonder fry on them than if you were to use straight up flour and then add seasonings to it. So don't keep trying to fry them until they're golden brown. They're going to be a very pale golden brown. And again, we don't want to overcrowd this pan, so I'm just going to make sure I've got these kind of tucked in here, and then we'll do a second round batch for it. You need to have enough space between them, otherwise they will stick together when you fry it. Pop those in. I think we can get a few more in here. And I want to just make sure. And now I'm going to turn mine down to about a 4.5, 5-ish. And we're going to let that fry, and then we'll flip them halfway through and crisp them up on the other side. And you want to go medium heat and cook them a little bit slower versus going high, because if you go too high, you're going to burn your outside before you have a chance to cook the inside of your chicken. Okay. Now that we have that going, that's always the most labor-intensive part, I should say. Let's get our slaw going, and we can make our, we'll then get our sauce going afterwards. Okay, for this, we're going to do kind of a lovely like Asian slaw. So I've got purple cabbage. We'll do carrots, cucumbers, green onions, some red onions for it.
Did you season the flour for the chicken?
Very minimally. I have used a little bit of black pepper and a little bit of garlic salt. And that is because all of this chicken is going to be coated in a sauce. And that sauce will have it's going to be an orange juice, brown sugar, it'll have some Japanese barbecue sauce in it. So it will have a lot of flavor in it. And I have found that if you go too heavy on your seasoning on the chicken, it overpowers it, and you can easily make your dish way too salty or too seasoned for it. So go minimal, because every piece is going to be coated in a wonderful sauce. Okay, we've got our cabbage here. Just chop it up so it's a little bit easier to eat on it. You could also use green cabbage if you have it. Either one works. But you know, I like to always get the purple. I like the fun colors. Although it's really funny when I make like a cabbage roll, like galumki with this, when I do it with purple cabbage, it's so funny. Or if I put this in like a stew, the purple cabbage will turn that broth actually like a bluish color, which is kind of funny. It'll turn the potatoes blue. Not like a purple, but actually like a blue. Okay, we've got our cabbage in here. We'll toss that in a second. I've got 2 carrots. We're going to make some carrot ribbons with this. So we'll peel the outside and then we'll put the ribbons in there. The ribbons I find are much nicer than shredded carrots because they're very tender and a little bit thinner, and they soak up the dressing really, really well. So we'll get this guy right here and nice little peel off. And we'll pop these in here. And then we're going to just make these little kind of in here just like this. And using your little peeler, just nice little like kind of over and over. And this is going to give you nice little tender pieces. And it's really nice too to do this versus buying like the shredded carrots at the store, because those shredded carrots tend to be really, really dried out. There, just a nice little thing. And 1 carrot is, and we're going to use 2, but it yields you quite a bit of carrot ribbons. So don't think you need a whole lot of carrots for it. And it's kind of fun. We'll take our chickens looking good. And again, with these, you're not so much looking for a bright kind of golden brown color. It's going to be more of a pale golden color with it because of the cornstarch does fry up in a much lighter color. And we don't have any added spices that are going to change the color of our fry significantly. Get this last little bit in here. Get these. It always surprises me how much we have on here. And then, we have recipe cards have dropped out. And so you'll have to be on the lookout for those, which we had our, I believe we did. I placed the cake one, my strawberry shortcake one, and then my golden curry cauliflower soup. So kind of like my pot of gold deliciousness for it. Those just came out. Here are our carrot ribbons with our cabbage. And then we're going to add in some red onion and a little bit of green onion and some cucumbers. With our red onion, I'm going to just slice it nice and thin. You don't need a whole lot because we're going to be using a mixture of both, but adds a little bit of a nice kind of aromatic flavor to it. But don't go too heavy on it unless you really, really love it. So just a bit of that. And then we've got some green onions here. And slice these up. They'll add a nice pop of green. They also have that nice fresh onion flavor. And then we're going to make a lovely kind of Asian slaw dressing with this. And let's get our last little ingredient in here, which is some baby cucumbers. And keep these nice and...
If given the opportunity, would you do a cooking test?
You know what? If the stars aligned and it worked out, yes, I think I would. I would love to try it. I'm not one to run away from a competition. I'll tell you that I'm very, very competitive in that sense. So I think I would. But it would have to make sure that, like for me, I wouldn't want to leave my family, you know, if it wasn't going to be a good time to kind of, you know, get around there. I don't know what they would eat. But, you know, I always sit there and I think it would be fun to do it. Let's see. Let's take a look at that. Almost there. You see how we've got this kind of long blondish color to it. Now, when it cools, it will get a little bit more golden brown on here. Let's see, we're just about, I'm going to give my pan just a quick rotation and then we'll flip these guys in about a minute or two. Okay, let's make our slaw dressing. Well, let's first grab our muffins out of the oven. And then we'll make our slaw dressing so we can toss that up. Then we're going to make our little orange marinade sauce that we'll coat our chicken in for it. These are almond muffins that we have been baking at 400. I'm going to just give them a little tap, make sure they're nice and firm at the top, which they are. Anytime you're baking like a muffin or a cupcake, or cake in general, give them a tap. If they're a little bit jiggly and wiggly, pop them in for another minute or two. Everybody's oven cooks a little bit differently, so always give them that little love tap, I will say, because an underbaked muffin is no good. Let me grab my little trivet here. But these, look at these beautiful little domes on them. These are our gorgeous almond muffins with our sourdough discard and a sour cream base on it. Let's slide that right there. But they have almond extract in it with, granulated sugar, so that has that nice little sweetness to it, but not necessarily overpowering. We're going to make a lovely almond glaze to go on top of it, and then we'll sprinkle some slivered almonds to give it that more bougie kind of look to it, elevate it a little bit, but still be delicious. Okay, let's flip these guys over. You can see they've got just that hint of golden brown, like that really little bit. We'll flip them all over. We'll fry them up. The second side fries much faster than the first side because it's just a little bit that needs to kind of cook up. And as these sit in the pan, you're going to actually notice the color is going to get a little bit darker for it. But again, because of the cornstarch, these are a nice blonde fry on it. Very, very light colored. Versus if you do a flour. And that's just because when they fry up, they're different ingredients and they just yield different colors. So I will say that's, I think, a mistake a lot of people will do if they're working with cornstarch. They'll keep frying and frying and frying, but then they'll overcook it. So, and you can see once we flipped it, it's already like a darker color from that first initial flip. Get that going. Let me get a little bowl here for our slaw on here. Mayo. I'm going to do kind of because I really love a nice kind of creamier slaw. We're going to do a little bit of mayo with this, but we're going to have some nice like sesame oil and kind of some more Asian flavors. We're going to use a little bit of freshly squeezed orange juice as well. Not super heavy in the mayo department, but I do like the creaminess of a slaw when it kind of coats the cabbage. It just clings on a little bit better. So we've got about 1/4 cup of mayo in here. And then we're going to add in about, I want to say 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. And then we have some sesame oil. Don't go too heavy on this. We're going to use a little bit of olive oil as well. We're going to do about, I want to say around a teaspoon or so of sesame oil. It has a pretty strong flavor, so a little goes a long way, but it will give you that nice kind of more nutty flavor to it. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons of olive oil.
Jenna made your tomato basil soup instead of delicious.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It always makes me happy when I hear people have tried it and they love it. It just, just makes me happy. Especially because I feel like, everybody can do this. Everybody can cook, just got to believe in yourself and, just get in the kitchen and try it. We're going to put in some ginger. I'm going to use about a teaspoon and a half because I want that ginger to kind of pop in it. If you're going to use fresh ginger and you're going to grate it, mince it up yourself, taste your ginger first. Fresh ginger, you never know if you're going to get a really spicy one or a mild one. So you're going to judge by how spicy it is. Give this a little bit of a mix here. And then I've got my ginger in here. I'm going to add just a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce. You don't need a whole lot, like a tablespoon. Adds a little bit of a savory element to it. And then we're going to add a little bit of sugar to it for it. But instead of using a granulated sugar, I'm going to use a little bit of a brown sugar, and then we'll add in our fresh orange juice. And that's going to be it. We don't need a whole lot. I don't like my slaw super, super sweet, so I'm going to use about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons. The same amount of vinegar you use is what I like to use in the sugar to kind of combat that tartness of it. And then we're going to add in juice from an orange, which is actually, I have like a clementine, but it's the same.
What?
A clementine or clementine. Same difference.
I have a question. Will the cameraman eat this?
He actually will. This is one. He's a very odd duck in the sense that there are certain foods that he eats that I'm like, you eat this, but you won't eat that. This is one of those ones. He actually really enjoys a coleslaw. So I don't know where the disconnect of all the other vegetables come from, but he actually likes this. This is one of his favorite meals. Okay, we're gonna mix in, just squeezing one whole juice from a clementine. There we go. And then before we kind of mix that in, I'm going to grab a plate right here and we can pop out this chicken and get our last bit going in there and frying. We're going to put it on some paper towels so that it can soak up some of that oil so that when we toss it back into our sauce that we'll make in a little bit, it will just be crispy and not greasy. Beautiful. I'll pop these little bits on. And I will say a little bit of chicken goes a long way when you're breading it like this for this dish, because again, we use just 2 chicken breasts, but this is just about half of it fried up and it makes a good amount of chicken. Get our last pieces going. And I'll tell you this, my kids are going to be very, very excited because when they come home and it's ever a dish like this, they're like, winning. They love this over. They're not as big of a fan on my soups as, the other foods that I make.
When you get a second, can you go over the sauce that you're making?
Yes, I'm making that's our coleslaw, and it's kind of a ginger orange, like a slaw, Asian slaw mix for our things. So it's going to bring in those nice little flavors to it. We have in there a little bit of brown sugar, mayonnaise, sesame oil, fresh juice from our clementine, about 1.5 teaspoons of minced ginger, and a little bit of rice vinegar for it. And drop this last bit in.
And do you post your recipes anywhere?
So we do put all of our live videos on link on our page, so everybody can always rewatch our videos and cook along with me again. And then we have, for our members, we send out some recipe cards every single month, a couple times a month, over recipes we've cooked during that month. We just released, my shortcake, my vanilla butter cake, and one of my soup recipes. And then I am working on a cookbook, so I'm hopeful to have that cookbook done in the end of March. So fingers crossed, there'll be another place for them. But we always have the live available for everyone. I'm gonna give this a nice little toss around. We've got a little bit of that.
Marianne, since you get.
Well, thank you, Marianne. We appreciate that.
And when you get a second, can you go over the batter for the chicken?
Yes. So this is just a really simple, light batter. It is a mixture of cornstarch, flour, garlic, salt, and black pepper. So very lightly seasoned. And we're going to coat it in a nice, lovely orange kind of sauce, like an orange Asian sauce for it. It'll be delicious. Perfect. And you can, even though I used only about 1 teaspoon of sesame oil in here, it is just that perfect amount. You get that nice little nutty flavor, which I love. Let's put this over here. And then we're going to give this a nice little mix around and coat everything up. And you always just want to let your slaw sit for a minute or two while it's kind of going. That way it kind of has time to marinate. And this could also not marinate. It's also great the next day too. And that's the nice thing about a slaw over a salad. A salad the next day never holds up, the lettuce wilts, but a coleslaw, like the cabbage, it actually just absorbs those flavors a little bit more. Okay, let's get to juicing this, and then we'll make our glaze for our muffins. We need our muffins to cool off just a little bit before we drizzle it over, or it'll slide right off. But let's get our little oranges juiced here. Don't ever seem to have full-size oranges, but little oranges work well. They actually have a bit more flavor. So I will mix it with a little bit of water to make sure that they don't go over the top in flavor. But we need about a half a cup of orange juice, which as long as this yields me about a fourth of a cup, I'll mix it with the water and we'll be good. The last two, before I kind of cut into them, I'm actually going to zest them, but we'll get this going here.
Marianne made your birthday cake for her granddaughter.
Oh, good.
Everyone loved it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I hope so. It's just a simple cake that you don't have to do a lot of fancy things. And sometimes that's the best thing, is when something doesn't require you to make like the egg whites and whip them in there. But I'm glad that everyone liked it.
You got a shot of Torn.
Oh, yes. Torn wanted his red velvet cake, and that one. I know there's certain things. There's like this Belgian waffle recipe I used to make all the time. It's actually based off of Emerald's waffle recipe, and I started making it when I was in like middle school, when my mom actually originally bought the waffle maker that I have now commandeered. But it was the one where it was like beat the egg whites and then fold them into it, and I'm like, too much work. I like my recipe now where I use my sourdough discard, and there is no beating of egg whites. It is simple. Hence, I made waffles this morning.
Have you picked up the waffle holders yet?
No, I have not. I do need to. I was just over there too. You know, I go over there so much and then I forget. Next time I go over there, which I'm going to be going over there soon, because we're doing this big, we got a dumpster, we've got a big kind of clean out, getting rid of, our washer and dryer and everything. And then I guess I've been doing my elliptical too much, that I broke it. Now this elliptical I got like 14 years ago, and I put a lot of miles on it. I broke it. And so I was like, so I'm going to have to look. I'm going to look on like, one of those little marketplaces, see if I can find a new one, because when the prices of when I bought an elliptical several years ago and the prices now have significantly increased, and I don't want to spend that much money on a elliptical, and I will find somebody who bought one and they regret their decision. I will reap those benefits. But I'm reorganizing my whole garage and getting it so I have a nice workout area, a little bit more space in it. Squeeze this guy up. Good. We've got about a fourth of a cup I'll add in. I'm going to zest those two ones first, because we want a little bit of orange zest in here for it. Okay. I'm going to use world's best zester. It's just a Parmesan grater, but it works really well for zesting. Gives you these nice little smaller pieces, which I like on there, because then you get that nice little orange flavor without it being a big chunk. Here. Now, using real oranges give you a lot more juice than these, but these are nice and sweet. We'll mix it with a little bit of water. That way, kind of dull it down and give us a little bit more liquid. We'll be about ready to flip these bits of chicken, and then we'll make up our sauce here in just a second. We'll make up our glaze, and then it'll be time to eat.
Do you know what you're making yet for dinner?
Yes. So we're going to have, I know what protein we're going to have. I don't know how I'm going to cook it yet. Too many options. But I got this Sea-to-Table seafood delivery box because I wanted to try it out. And they have a good amount of variety. So I set out, I believe I grabbed and set out red Maine redfish. Here we go. So I'm going to cook that up tonight. I'll probably do a nice like pan fry with a nice little fresh version of it, because I always like to test out and see exactly how the protein tastes. So we're going to do a fish tonight, and I'm very excited to try it to see if it's worth getting it another month for it. Because that's the nice thing about it is, our grocery store, I can always get good salmon, I can always get good tilapia, but other types of fish, I can't always get like the best version of it. And, I try to do a little bit of variety and kind of change it up. And I guess I could get better variety if I go to Whole Foods, but Whole Foods, whole paycheck, you know. Got it on a budget when we're feeding 9 people. So I'm going to try it out. I'm hoping that it will be good because I got it to where it's like we'll deliver like once a month, but it will yield like 8 meals out of it, which is pretty good with a nice variety in it and different types of fish. So I'm going to add in a little bit. We've got just over around a 1/3 cup here, and add in a little bit of water to bring it to our liquid. I'm going to do a little bit more because it already seems pretty strong colored for our liquid base in this. Let's flip our, let's see if it's ready to flip here. Yeah, we're pretty good. And then we're going to start making our sauce. I'm going to grab out a pan. We'll make that. And then we got to make our glaze as well. They're not going to be flavored. Cameraman's stealing the chicken. I always say them, I said, they're very mildly flavored right now. It's just like eating a battered piece of chicken that has no seasoning on it. Not very good. You're like, where's the salt? Where's the flavor? It's got to be patient. It's something the cameraman is not good at.
What's your secret to not having the butter come off or the batter?
The batter coming off. So this one, it doesn't come off too much because of that cornstarch really clings to it. When I'm doing my double dipped, where I do my dry and then egg and then my next, like my second dry base of it, that doing that first coating of that dredge, the seasoned dredge, is what on the dry like chicken is what keeps it on. For this, the cornstarch really adheres to it and it kind of makes a nice little paste for it.
Is your wall oven fixed?
My wall oven is fixed. We actually just pulled our muffins out of our wall oven here. So I'm very, 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 very happy that it is fixed and it has been wonderful. Let me grab a little pan right here so we can get some oil heating up and garlic going for our sauce. And then I'm going to grab my powdered sugar so we can make our glaze for our muffins. Put in about a tablespoon or so of olive oil here. And then I'm going to mince up some garlic so that we can kind of get a nice little garlic flavor to it. And then we'll add in some ginger paste, let that saute. And then we're going to add in our orange juice. We're going to mix a little bit of it with some brown sugar and cornstarch to make a slurry so that will thicken up our sauce. And a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce and a little bit of rice vinegar. So lots of different components to give you that robust flavor that a lot of sauces in Asian cuisine have. You know, they're very complex, but they have this wonderful unison that just works together. And it always surprises me how many different ingredients they're made up of, but they do work so harmoniously together. Okay, let's get this garlic up because everybody loves garlic. Here. Well, I think the last time I made this, I made them with blood oranges, and it made the sauce such a lovely, like kind of almost like a purplish red color. It was delicious. It's been a minute though. Okay, let's get this heating up. I'm going to drop in our garlic and let that start to saute up. We want to bring those flavors out first before we add in other stuff for it. And then let's give it a good little swirl over here. Grab out another set of tongs. Okay. Now, I'm going to wash my hands real quickly. Let's make our glaze. So I'm going to grab my powdered sugar because I left it in my pantry. And we're going to make a simple glaze using powdered sugar, almond extract, and a little bit of cream. And we'll whisk it together. We'll drizzle it over and sprinkle with some little almonds for a lovely little simple but delicious muffin that gives you kind of that almond pastry vibes. So let's start with our cream. We're going to use about a tablespoon of cream with, I'm going to do about a half a teaspoon of almond extract because we don't need a whole lot of glaze for this, but it has a strong flavor to it. And then let me grab a little whisk here. We are going to mix in a little bit of powdered sugar at a time until we get the consistency around, Elmer's glue, nice bit of thickness to it. Depending whether you use cream, half and half, or milk, you'll need more or less powdered sugar. So really just add until you get to the consistency versus an exact amount. But it should be around a cup or a little less. And I always try to make just small amounts because we don't need a whole lot of glaze. A little goes a long way on these guys. Just a teeny bit more. Okay, that looks pretty darn good. Didn't even use a whole cup. I probably have around a half a cup. Let me give my garlic here a nice little stir. I'm going to turn it down to about a 4 and we'll let it simmer. And then let's check my chicken here. Looks like we are pretty good on it. So I'm going to turn these guys off. And we're going to take these ones out. And we'll let them kind of sit and crisp up. And soak out the extra little bit of oil. I'm going to move these over. But they've got this nice little crispiness to them. But I want them to have a little spot on the paper towel. Here. Okay, perfect. Slide some of these. Some of them I'm going to give like another minute or two, but we've got some pretty nice ones going on. Perfect. And again, this is just a simple cornstarch and flour with a little bit of garlic, salt, and black pepper. Not a whole lot of seasoning because we're going to be making this lovely sauce that is going to coat each piece of chicken. And if you season up your base too much, then it's just going to be too kind of overpowering. So less is more on the chicken bases, which is the exact opposite of what I say when we're actually making, breaded chicken, or I'm always like, use more spices than you think. On this one, less because we're making a sauce that these are all going to be coated in.
And was that just 2 chicken breasts?
Yes, 2 chicken breasts. And you can see how much it's going to yield, these 2 chicken breasts. And it makes quite a bit of chicken. And they will tend to get, as you can see, they get even more golden brown. They're pale white when you kind of first pop them out, and then they get more golden as they sit and cool off. Beautiful. But 2 chicken breasts, and they weren't even exceptionally large chicken breasts, made a good amount of this. Okay. Our garlic is looking good. Let's get our ginger in here. I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of ginger right into our garlic and our oil because we want that flavor to really pop and kind of that heat will bring it out. There. Give it a chance to kind of just caramelize up a little bit. It smells so nice. There. And my heat isn't on super high.
What's your flour to cornstarch ratio for
So
the chicken breading?
I did half and half on there. So I think I had about all in all, probably 3/4 of a cup of each, between a half and 3/4 of a cup. Kind of eyeballed it, but I like to do half and half. You can always go all the way cornstarch if you want, but that uses a lot of cornstarch. So I tend to like to mix it up so I don't have to go so heavy on it. Because if we don't always carry around a lot of cornstarch, you get these little tubs versus flour, we have lots of it. Now, the flour makes it a little bit heavier, but going half and half still gives you a light, crispy base to it. Okay. Do a little bit more. We've got our brown sugar here. We're going to add in just about a teaspoon of sesame oil. Just a light drizzle. And then I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of vinegar. This is rice vinegar. A tablespoon or so, I'll do 2 tablespoons of my Japanese barbecue sauce. If you're going to use soy sauce, you can use about like a little bit less, around a tablespoon, and then add some more. And we're going to let this cook up just a little bit. We're going to add in around a 1/3 cup of brown sugar. We're going to let this just kind of dissolve that sugar just a little bit. And then we're going to add in half of our freshly squeezed orange juice mixed with a little bit of water. And then we're going to mix the rest with some cornstarch to kind of thicken up our sauce. But I'm going to give it a good stir. And then we're going to add in half of it. And I'm just going to let this simmer for a second, kind of heat up. And once it comes to a nice little simmer, then we will make our slurry and put that in there. But while we wait, let's get our muffins drizzled up here and then sprinkled with our almond slivers. So just a little bit of our nice kind of almond glaze here. Nice little drizzle over it, because they have already a nice little touch of sweetness, and this has a nice pop of almond flavor in it, but you don't need to completely coat the top of it. A little goes a long way in adding that nice little extra touch of sweetness to it. And you could always just pop this in a little piping bag, and if you want like a really perfect drizzle. But I find that the whisk does a great job, especially for our family, where we care more about how delicious it tastes versus whether it looks bougie and perfect. And then just adding a couple little bits of slivered almonds to the top adds a nice little crunch to it. Gives you a little texture to the muffin, which is lovely. And it'll cling on to that glaze too, so they'll hold on well. And voila, these are our beautiful almond muffins with our sourdough discard. We have a lovely almond glaze in there, and so they'll just have this lovely almond flavor all the way throughout. Okay, let's get our cornstarch in here. We're going to mix it with our rest of our orange juice, and then we'll add it back in, and this is going to make us, this slurry will thicken up our sauce for it. I'm going to drop in just about 2 tablespoons or 2 of my little big kitchen spoons in here. And then I'm going to grab a whisk here, and we'll slowly add it in here. And then that heat will cause it to thicken up into a lovely little sauce. Now you might need to add, a little bit more cornstarch maybe, but this should be enough to get that nice thick base to it. And I'll just turn the heat up just a smidge. And then once it starts to thicken, just like cornstarch does, then we will toss our chicken in there. But we'll let it heat up. Don't just keep adding in cornstarch until it thickens. It needs to heat up first before you add an additional amount to see if you need any more. I'm going to clear this out of the way. That way we'll be ready to serve up here in just a second, because it is just about ready to eat. Slide this guy right here. And then we can check on our rice. Beautiful. I'm going to turn that off. That's a nice thing about a rice, cooking it over nice and low, just lovely, nice and fluffy. The best way to get a nice fluffy rice, instead of stirring it with a spoon, do it like you do with quinoa or couscous. Go in with a fork and fluff it first, just like that. That will keep you from getting a nice thick mound, but more of a fluffy base. Here we go. See how it's thickened up now that we have it in here? So every little bit of movement, I have it. I'm going to turn my heat off. I'm going to give this a quick taste. Make sure I don't want to add in anything else. Perfect. And we're going to toss in our chicken here. And then we're going to coat it all up in our sauce with our little tongs here. And Here we go. So coat it up. And this is why I say you don't want to use season it up. I'm going to remove it completely from the heat. Perfect. Beautiful. And then the last thing we do right before serving is we're going to add up some green onions, and then it'll be ready to serve up our little lunch here. So we're going to take some green onions here and just going to snip over the top and add them on here. This is going to add a nice, lovely, fresh flavor thing. You could also add in some sesame seeds if you wanted a little extra crunch and more of that little nut flavor. We do have sesame oil in there, so you don't need to add too much. But let's get ready to serve up here, guys. We've got quite the little feast here, which I can tell I'm going to have some happy kids for their little snack. Always like their second lunch. They come home and they're always like, so what'd you make? They always take the baked good, but depending on what I made as the lunch part, this is the one that they're going to love. Grab that. Slide these guys over. Got my rice. We'll get a better spoon to scoop that out with. Got my shovel. My spoon. And we need some tongs for our slaw. They smell so good. Okay. For lunch today, we have our jasmine rice. Make a nice little big pile right here on the side. We're going to spread it out, and we're going to top that off with our orange chicken that we made with freshly squeezed orange juice and a sweetened sauce with brown sugar, ginger, garlic, and a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce. And then on the side, we are going to serve it with our Asian slaw that we made with ginger, sesame oil, cucumbers, green onions, purple cabbage, and carrots. And then for a sweet treat at the end, we have an almond muffin with an almond glaze and some toasted almonds on top for just a simple but delicious little lunch here today. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our orange chicken with our Asian slaw and almond muffins, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex clad pans, all clad pans, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for